The first time I saw the smoke, it was just a thin column, lazy and curling, dancing up into the afternoon sky like it had nothing to be ashamed of. I was standing on my back porch, mug in hand, watching my daughter Lily play near the creek bed that wound behind our property. She was stacking little river stones into a crooked tower, the kind only an 8-year-old could take seriously, when she turned and pointed. "Mommy, look, someone's burning stuff." At first, I didn't think much of it. This neighborhood, Willow Ridge, was the kind of place that wore its own rules like a badge. Every house matched, every lawn manicured. The HOA made sure of that. So if someone was burning leaves, it had to be sanctioned, right? But the smoke kept coming, thicker, darker. The breeze shifted and brought the smell with it, sharp, chemical. Wrong. It wasn't just wood or dry grass. There was a bite to it, like burning plastic and oil and something buried too long in the ground. I left my coffee behind and stepped off the porch. The creek behind my house wasn't much, 10, maybe 12 feet, across in most places, but it cut through the entire south side of Willow Ridge like a scar. HOA property bordered it on the other side, a so-called natural preservation zone they claimed to protect, though it mostly served as an excuse to keep people like me off their land. I crossed the little footbridge and moved toward the smoke, phone in hand. And there she was, Karen Venine. You didn't have to live in Willow Ridge long to know her name. She wasn't just on the HOA board. She was the board. Blonde helmet hair, always in white tennis skirts, always with a clipboard tucked under one arm like it was an extension of her soul. She was standing near a large pile of dried leaves and yard waste, a lit torch in one hand, wearing gardening gloves like it made the act noble. Behind her, 2 other board members, Jerry and someone I didn't recognize, stood watching. "Excuse me?" I called out as politely as I could manage. "Are you supposed to be burning that here?" Karen turned slowly, almost amused that someone would dare question her. The flames crackled behind her, licking through the brush pile with growing hunger. "This is HOA land," she said, gesturing grandly. "We're doing seasonal cleanup, perfectly legal. Go enjoy your afternoon." I didn't move. "There are kids playing near the creek. That smoke. It smells like more than just leaves." Karen's smile thinned. "This is under control. We've done this before." That was the moment I should have walked away. I should have shaken my head and gone back across the footbridge, maybe called the city anonymously. But something about the way she looked at me, like I was beneath her concern, lit a fuse in my spine. "I think I'll just take a quick video," I said, lifting my phone. Karen's smile disappeared entirely. She stepped forward just enough to make it uncomfortable. "I suggest you mind your own yard, Miss Harmon." It wasn't the words that got to me. It was the tone, the assumption, the confidence that I would back down because she said so. I turned, walked back to my side of the creek, and kept the camera rolling the whole time. That night, I couldn't sleep. The fire hadn't stayed small. From my upstairs window, I saw the flames grow past sunset. A low red glow throbbed in the tree line like the forest itself had a fever. I heard sirens just after 10. The HOA hadn't called the fire department until it jumped containment, and by then it had scorched nearly a quarter acre of the Creekside Reserve. What I didn't expect was how close it had come to my property. The next morning, I walked the line behind my fence and found the fire had crept right up to the edge of the wooden posts. Some of them were singed. The grass had gone black and brittle. Lily's stone towers were a pile of gray ash, and that's when I saw it. The sheen. Just beyond the creek bed, in a hollow where the fire had burned hottest, the ground shimmered. I stepped closer. At first, I thought it was melted plastic, maybe a toy or tarp. But as I knelt and touched the edge with a stick, the surface split open like scorched pudding. A chemical smell rushed out, something like paint thinner, motor oil, and death. Beneath the ashes were barrels, blackened, melted in places, partially buried. I counted 3 of them. One had a faded white label on the side, the kind you see on hazardous waste containers. I stumbled back, heart pounding. I took photos. Lots of them. But more than that, something inside me changed in that moment. I'd lived in Willow Ridge for 9 years. Put up with their fines, their notices, their tone. I'd bit my tongue when they told me I couldn't plant wildflowers along my back fence, when they called my porch swing non-compliant, when Karen reported me for having a tomato plant visible from the sidewalk. But this wasn't about aesthetics, this was poison. This was something they weren't supposed to burn, something they'd hidden, and now they'd lit it on fire. That evening, I uploaded the photos to a private folder and backed them up to the cloud. Then I drafted an email, not to the HOA, to the Environmental Protection Agency, and I signed it, Rebecca Harmon. 70 Winding Creek Lane, Willow Ridge, T-Exit Mother, neighbor, not going away, unauthorized surveillance of HOA property, and slanderous content distributed without board approval, a $500 fine. They were trying to bully me into silence. But what Karen didn't know was that I'd already sent the video footage and the photos to a contact I knew at the local news station, a woman named Daria I'd once helped with legal research years ago. She was hungry for a story, and this one was about to light up more than just a few bushes. I stood at the edge of the burn site with a mask pulled tight across my face and a camera clenched in one gloved hand. The earth was brittle beneath my boots, ash crunching like shattered glass with every step. Even days after the fire had been contained, the stench still lingered, burned plastic, scorched earth, and something sour and metallic that clung to the back of my throat. I didn't bring Lily this time. I told her I needed quiet to take photos for the city inspectors. But the truth was simpler. The place felt wrong, like a graveyard that hadn't finished settling. What the fire exposed was worse than I ever imagined. The creek had receded slightly after a week of dry heat, revealing more of its muddy banks and with it more damage. Roots were scorched, bark peeled from blackened trees. But what caught my attention was a strange iridescence on the surface of the soil near the bend, like oil slicks shifting beneath a thin layer of silt. I crouched and dug gently with a trowel I'd brought from the garden shed. 3 inches down, the soil changed color, no longer brown but dark gray, almost blue. I filled a Ziploc bag, sealed it, and labeled it with a marker. Sample number 1. I had 5 more by the time I made it back to the footbridge. I knew what I was doing was risky. Technically, I was now the one trespassing on HOA property, but that creek ran behind my home, past the woods Lily played in, and if something was bleeding into that water, I needed to know exactly what it was. That night, I emailed Daria again, attached the new photos, a video clip, soil sample details. Her reply came fast. This is gold. I've sent it to our environmental desk. Don't do anything risky, okay? This could be big, but it needs confirmation. She was right. No one would care about the warnings of a single mom until there was evidence. Real, testable, undeniable. So I mailed the samples. I had a contact through my old firm, a paralegal turned lab tech named Mateo. He owed me a favor from a deposition I'd covered for him years ago, back when I still wore heels to court and thought HOA bylaws were just tedious reading. I told him the samples came from a property dispute. Didn't mention Willow Ridge by name. He promised results in 72 hours, maybe sooner. The next day I woke to find a neon orange notice nailed to my mailbox post. Immediate compliance required. Unauthorized fencing repair. Unsanctioned landscaping along common creek boundary. Violation of decorum policy. Hostile engagement with board members. Fines totaling $200, due within 10 business days. I stood in my driveway barefoot, hands shaking. Landscaping. I had replanted 2 flower beds. Fence repair. I replaced a single burned panel. Hostile engagement. I had spoken. It was war now. I scanned the notice into my growing case file. Then I wrote a new letter, not to the city, not to the fire marshal, not to the news. I wrote to the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality. By Friday, Mateo called. No small talk. Where did you get this stuff? I hesitated. Residential property with an open burn site, he exhaled. Okay, you've got benzene, toluene, xylene, and elevated dioxins in your soil samples. This isn't household waste. This is industrial. And illegal. My mouth went dry. How dangerous? Long-term exposure? Pretty bad, especially for kids. If this stuff's in your groundwater, he didn't finish. I didn't need him to. I made 4 copies of his lab report and delivered them to the fire marshal's office. City code enforcement. the Environmental Commission, and 1 copy to Daria. That night I made another copy and slipped it into Karen's mailbox with a note. "This is what you tried to burn. RHI barely slept." Kept the curtains drawn. The next morning, 2 unmarked SUVs pulled into the HOA clubhouse parking lot. Inspectors stepped out. Gloves, clipboards, cameras. Whisper started before noon. By 4 p.m., the HOA email blast went out. "We are cooperating fully with an ongoing environmental assessment." Transparent. Now they wanted transparency. Later that week, while standing with Lily, she asked, "Mommy, is the creek still sick?" "Not for long," I said. But I wasn't sure. The letter came in a thick cream envelope. No stamp. Someone had delivered it by hand. A cease and desist from the HOA legal counsel. The tone was elegant. The threat was not, "Shut up or pay." They accused me of defamation, trespassing, and inciting unrest. They demanded removal of all evidence or face litigation. They didn't want silence. They wanted submission, but they had forgotten who I used to be. I spent a decade working environmental law. I knew how discovery worked. If they took me to court, their records would be exposed. Every contract, every board email, every lie. So instead, they tried something else. Code enforcement visits, fake complaints, parking citations, and the worst, a CPS report. Someone claiming Lily was unsafe. CPS came to my door. Polite but thorough. Lily clung to me, scared. That night I broke. Not because they could hurt me, but because they were trying to hurt her. I called Daria. "We're running it," she said. 3 nights from now. Prime time. "You're not alone in this." The segment aired. 8 full minutes. Drone footage. Soil test overlays. Burn scars. Redacted my name, but the HOA crest was right there. Unmistakable. They even included an interview with a former board member. Someone who had quietly resigned a year ago after a disagreement over property disposal methods. He didn't show his face, but his voice was clear. I was told to look the other way. When I asked questions about the waste materials near the maintenance shed, I was told it was old landscaping fill. But I saw invoices from contractors that don't exist. Within 24 hours, the HOA's inbox collapsed. Within 48, the city council announced a special session. Within 72, EPA officers returned with federal marshals. Karen didn't answer her door. Her white Lexus was still in the driveway, but the blinds were drawn and her mailbox stuffed full. Some neighbors whispered that she'd gone to stay with her sister in Fredericksburg. Others said she was consulting a lawyer. I didn't care. The following day I received a visit, but this one was different. A man in a dark suit with a federal badge clipped to his belt stepped onto my porch. He introduced himself as Agent Nolan from the Environmental Crimes Task Force. He asked if we could talk. Privately, I led him into the kitchen, and he opened a file with my name and address printed at the top. "You submitted reports, photos, and soil samples. Is that correct?" "Yes," I said. He nodded slowly. "Do you know what was inside those barrels?" "No, just what the lab reported." He set down a photograph. An aerial thermal image of the burn site. Heat signatures, soil disturbance patterns, excavation markers. Then another. Blurry but clear enough. Industrial solvent drums and construction waste. We believe the HOA knowingly used this protected land as a dump site for over 10 years. The fire exposed enough to launch a federal investigation. My stomach twisted. "And Karen," he added, offering a thin smile. "She's not the only one we're looking at." That night I sat on the back porch with Lily asleep inside. The creek burbled quietly below, a low whisper against the rocks. There were still caution flags dotting the far bank and yellow tape around what used to be Karen's burn pile, but the smoke was gone. The air was clean again, or getting there. A few neighbors began reaching out. Small gestures, muffins left on the porch, a handwritten card that said simply, "Thank you for protecting us." I wasn't ready to forgive the silence. But something had shifted. Karen had tried to scare me, to find me, to break me. But instead, she lit a match she couldn't control and burned down her own empire of lies. 3 days after the segment aired, there was a knock on my door. A woman I didn't recognize stood there in faded jeans and a denim jacket, hair streaked with silver. She didn't smile. "I used to be the HOA secretary. Name's Elaine. I didn't know whether to invite her in or shut the door. You got time to talk?" she asked. We sat on the porch swing Lily and I had repainted 2 summers ago. The HOA fined me $100 for it being the wrong shade of lilac. Elaine didn't waste time. They bullied me off the board, she said. 6 years ago, I started asking where the budget surplus went. Why our landscaping costs doubled. Jerry said I wasn't aligned with the board's vision. Karen told me if I didn't resign, they'd find a reason to disqualify me. I narrowed my eyes. Why now? She sighed. Because you did what I couldn't, you pushed back. And now that they're exposed, I want you to see something. She pulled a flash drive from her pocket and set it on the porch railing. It's all there. Meeting notes, contractor lists, internal memos. Karen never let them go into official records. But I printed everything before I left. They thought I deleted it. I didn't speak. I just took it. That night, I opened a folder labeled Shadow Meetings. What I found made me sick. The HOA had been hiring unlicensed waste removal contractors since 2014. Companies with no paper trail. Dissolved within a year. But their billing records were real. Tens of thousands of dollars moved out of the HOA Improvement Fund under vague categories. Soil remediation, drainage enhancement, clubhouse HVAC, but the emails told the truth. Make sure we cover the barrels before inspections. Dump behind lot 43, no cameras. Rebecca Harmon is getting too curious. Flag her landscaping again. And one line buried deep. If we torch it once it's full, no one will ever know it was there. The date matched, almost exactly 4 years before. Karen's leaf burn accident, it hadn't been an accident. Printed everything and gave it to Agent Nolan 2 days later. This just saved us 6 weeks, he said. I told him I didn't do it for the case. I did it for my daughter. The next day, the board held an emergency meeting. 3 board members resigned. Karen didn't show up. She'd been served with a federal subpoena. The acting president read a statement about cooperating fully and transition of leadership. Not an apology, but a crack. Elaine found me afterward. You're not done. You should run, I laughed. For what? HOA board. You stood up when the rest of us ducked, she said. This neighborhood needs someone with a spine. I told her I'd think about it. That night, as I tucked Lily into bed, she asked, Mommy, is it safe again? I brushed her hair back. Not yet, I said. But soon, and for the first time I believed it. 2 weeks later, my phone rang. Washington, D.C. Special Agent Lydia Rhodes with the EPA. What you submitted raised every red flag we have. Contamination confirmed in 6 locations, some of it tied to groundwater feeding the city wetland basin. Willow Ridge HOA is now classified under environmental crime statutes. We're coordinating with DOJ, state agencies, and federal enforcement. Things are about to get very public. The following Monday, I met with her and 2 investigators. They showed me a map of Willow Ridge. Red flags marked dump sites. One was close to the trail where Lily rode her bike. Are they dangerous now? I asked. Some of the chemicals degrade slowly, Rhodes said. Others leach into the water. Hazmat teams are being dispatched for removal and containment. Until then, no children or pets near those areas. I nodded, jaw tight. Then Lydia pulled out a manila envelope and slid it toward me. Inside was a printed transcript from a wiretap someone from the board had flipped and agreed to cooperate. The voice was Karen's. I told Jerry it wasn't going to burn clean, but he said the flames would cover it. No one looks at ash. I swear to God, if that woman hadn't started filming. She trailed off, but it was enough. They weren't just negligent. They were fully, criminally aware of what they were doing. That evening, the federal EPA team arrived in Willow Ridge in force. No sirens, no theatrics. Just 4 black Suburbans, a hazmat truck, a mobile lab unit, and a dozen field officers in protective suits. They cordoned off the creek trail and 3 adjacent lots. One of them posted an official EPA notice outside the clubhouse doors. Site under federal investigation. Unauthorized entry prohibited. Neighbors came out in droves. Phones out, whispers loud. Karen was nowhere to be seen, but Jerry Mathesy tried to approach the agents, waving his HOA credentials. I watched from my porch as Agent Rhodes herself stepped in front of him. From the way his shoulders slumped and his mouth dropped open, I knew it wasn't a polite conversation. By sunset, local news vans had returned. The HOA clubhouse was declared a contaminated zone. The maintenance shed behind it, the one I'd seen them sneaking into after the fire, was sealed off. Its contents tagged for federal evidence collection. The next morning, a letter arrived at my door, but this one didn't threaten or fine me. It was a formal notice from the EPA acknowledging me as the primary whistleblower in the Willow Ridge environmental investigation. They offered protection under the federal whistleblower statutes, along with an open invitation to testify before the State Oversight Committee, should I choose to. But tucked inside the envelope was something else. A handwritten note from Agent Rhodes. Your courage forced the truth into daylight. We'll handle the cleanup, but you sparked it. Stay strong. I folded the note and tucked it into Lily's baby book. One day I'd tell her everything. Not just what happened, but why I stood up. Why her health, her future, her right to live free of silent poison mattered more than HOA politics or fear. But the intimidation wasn't over. That afternoon, a black SUV pulled into my driveway. Not government plates. Two men stepped out, both business casual, one in sunglasses, the other carrying a small briefcase. I didn't recognize either of them. My instincts bristled. Miss Harmon, Sunglasses said. Who's asking? I replied. We represent interests who believe it's in everyone's best interest that this matter not escalate further. So you're here to threaten me? No, ma'am, Briefcase said smoothly. We're here to offer resolution quietly. We're prepared to offer a financial settlement if you agree not to pursue further public commentary, litigation, or participation in any proceedings related to Willow Ridge. You're trying to buy my silence, I said. Let's not be dramatic, Sunglasses replied. This isn't about guilt. It's about closure for the community. For everyone, I said nothing. Instead, I stepped inside, then returned with a photocopy of the EPA Federal Whistleblower Protection Act. You've got 30 seconds to leave my property before I call the agents who gave me this. They left fast. That night, I stood on my porch as the wind shifted, carrying the odor of ash away at last. Lily slept inside, curled under a blanket, cartoons humming softly. The war wasn't over, but the tide had turned. They sent threats. I sent truth. They sent lawyers. I sent evidence, and now, the people who spent years burying waste and silencing anyone who stood in their way were watching everything they built unravel under the weight of the very ground they poisoned. It started with a drone photo. A charred plot of land near the creek, scorched trees, exposed barrels oozing black chemical foam, yellow EPA flags fluttering like warning signs on a battlefield. The San Antonio Tribune ran the headline, Toxic Truth Buried in Suburbia. How a bonfire exposed a decade of poison. Suddenly, Willow Ridge wasn't a quiet gated suburb anymore. It was a national headline. CNN aired Karen's voice from the wiretap as the cold opened. I told Jerry it wasn't going to burn clean. Karen's Lexus was towed under federal order. HOA bank statements leaked. Payments to fake waste companies. Fraud. Cover-ups. Lies. The neighborhood went silent. The HOA tried to throw Karen under the bus. But I knew better. Then came an anonymous envelope. Inside, a photo of Karen standing in front of the maintenance shed holding a red gas can. The barrel behind her clearly visible. Someone had been documenting long before I ever filmed. I gave the photo to Agent Rhodes. We're already building a federal case, she said. This helps. Soon the mayor held a press conference calling it a betrayal of public trust. Activists protested. A website launched. Donations poured in. Water and soil tests began. Journalists called. Documentary crews wanted interviews. I declined most. This wasn't about me. It was about the people who trusted the place they lived. They deserved better. We all did. Something happened I didn't expect. I got a letter from Karen. Handwritten, no return address, just my name and address on the envelope in tight cursive. The note inside was short. You think you saved them, but you burned this place down. I hope your daughter's proud. No signature, just venom and fear. I read it once, then again. The paper smelled like expensive perfume. For a moment, I almost felt a flicker of pity. She was watching everything crumble, and all she could do was lash out at the person who had refused to stay silent. But then I thought of Lily. Her cough, the doctor's visits, the rashes, and pity evaporated. I gave the note to the feds. They confirmed the handwriting matched Karen's HOA correspondence files. The letter, they said, would be added to the growing file of evidence, showing her pattern of intimidation and retaliation. I was done giving her space in my mind. The world could have her now. That weekend, Lily and I planted a new bed of marigolds along the back fence. The same strip the fire had scorched clean. The soil had been tested. It was safe again, clean again, and when the first bright yellow blossoms opened, Lily clapped and said, "It looks happy now." So did I, because the truth had taken root and nothing Karen could burn would ever cover it again. I used to think Karen was the rot, the root of everything, the fines, the intimidation, the arrogance. She was the loudest, the boldest, the one who lit the match. But rot like this doesn't spread unless the wood is already soft. And when the subpoenas started flying, it didn't take long to see how deep the disease went. Agent Rhodes called me on a Tuesday morning. Her tone was clipped, focused. "We've executed 3 more warrants," she said. "Not just Karen. The treasurer, the maintenance supervisor, and 2 former board members were implicated. Conspiracy to commit environmental fraud. Falsifying HOA budget allocations, destruction of evidence." I sat at the kitchen table staring at Lily's untouched cereal bowl. "Are they all going to be arrested?" "They will be. One already turned himself in." She didn't say who. I didn't need her to. Because that night, the neighborhood group chat, once dominated by polite threats and lawn gossip, lit up with a single post from Jerry Mathes's wife. "Please pray for our family. We're cooperating." Jerry made mistakes, but he didn't act alone. And then, the floodgates opened. Neighbors I'd never spoken to came forward with their stories. People who had been fined, silenced, intimidated, shamed, people who thought they were alone. Turns out, I wasn't the only one they targeted. It wasn't the rules that were the problem, it was the people who weaponized them. 2 weeks later, the EPA released an interim public report. It named names: Karen. Jerry, Howard, Blumenthal, Diane, Lopez, Gregory, Lynn. 1.2 million in fake contracts. Money laundered through seasonal maintenance and beautification repairs. They used our money to poison our neighborhood. The city called an emergency town hall. For once, it wasn't in the HOA clubhouse. That building was still taped off, padlocked, toxic. Instead, we met in the elementary school gym. I almost didn't go, but Agent Rhodes called my name. I walked to the front. She handed me an official commendation, recognizing me as the whistleblower. The room clapped, not loud, not dramatic, just real. Neighbors who once avoided me looked at me with sincerity. After the meeting, a man with weathered hands approached me. "You don't remember me," he said. "I helped build this neighborhood in '92. I saw barrels being moved late at night. I didn't ask questions. I should have. I'm sorry," I shook my head. "You're speaking now, and that mattered." Change came slowly. Oversight. Council cleanup grants. Soil testing. Water filtration. Programs. Then I got a letter. Not a threat. Not a fine. An invitation. "We want you to serve as a citizen. Advisor for environmental redevelopment. You understand what's at stake. We need your voice." I asked Lily, "How would you feel if Mommy helped fix the neighborhood?" She asked, "Will there still be flowers?" "More than ever." "Then you should do it." So I did. We rebuilt the HOA from the ground up. No more secrecy. No more silent fines. No more intimidation disguised as community standards. We called it stewardship, not control. We planted flowers along the creek, the same creek where the first barrels had been found. A little boy ran up holding dirt in his hands. "Miss Rebecca, there's a turtle." We watched as it slipped into the water. "He came back," he said. "Yes," I said. "He did." Karen pled guilty. 3 years federal time restitution. The others cut deals. They lost everything they tried to control. And one day, I got a letter from a woman in Pennsylvania. "Your voice gave me courage to use mine. Thank you for standing in the fire." I lit a candle. Not in mourning, but in clarity. Because sometimes fire destroys. But sometimes fire reveals. The grass behind. My home has grown back. The fence still has scorch marks. I kept them. Proof that even the safest places can burn. Proof that silence can be broken. Proof that justice is slow, but steady, and when it finally arrives, it runs clear, just like the creek.